Well, welcome to A Lot of Family. I'm your host, Adam Madden, and this is our pilot episode. So thank you for joining us as we kick things off. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and where we plan on going with this podcast. My wife, Paige, and I have been married for almost 3 decades now. Plus, we were high school sweethearts, so we have been together almost forever. If you decide to listen to this podcast in the days ahead, consider yourself warned because you will definitely hear me dote on her quite a bit. And frankly, I do this without apology because in a weird way, I have sort of a man crush on our Puritan forefathers, and I hope to imitate them on at least on some elementary level. And you may be aware that the Puritans were known for their exuberant expressions of their love for God, but what you may not be aware of is that they also simultaneously believed that they should do the same towards their wives, meaning husbands were doters. They doted on God and they doted on their wives, and they frankly had a hard time not doing both. Pastor Thomas Hooker, writing in the mid-1600s, took the words right out of my mouth when he said, "The man whose heart is endeared to the woman he loves, he dreams of her in the night, hath her in his eye and apprehension when he awakes, museth on her as he sits at table, and walks with her when he travels." And I say amen to that. And not only is Paige drop dead gorgeous, but she is really a wealth of wisdom for younger moms and wives. So I will do my best to drag her on here from time to time. She'll be kicking and screaming, and I say kicking and screaming because, as she should, she does have an aversion to microphones. A couple things you should know about her, though. She doesn't like me to share this next story, but it does sort of illustrate, I think, the transforming power of the gospel. So I think it's fair that I do share it. But many moons ago, she was the captain of the cheerleading squad, and she went from doing football and basketball halftime dances that would make a sailor blush with shame to this elegant, refined wife and homeschooling mom of 9 children, undergirded, by the way, by a robust patriarchal theology that would probably make many modern evangelical pastors blush with shame. And I do say that without stuttering, but she is fiercely loyal to Christ, His Word, and to me and my vision for our family. And if you don't believe me, you can just ask our 9 kids. Like I said, we have a mess of them, currently ages 24 to 11. We've been in the thick of homeschooling for a couple decades now, and we still have a ways to go. But you might say we were homeschooling before homeschooling was cool. I only say that because I have this, again, I grew up on 70s, 80s, and 90s country music. And so Barbara Mandrell in the early 80s came out with a song that was "I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool." And so we were homeschooling when it wasn't cool, when it wasn't socially acceptable. But let me just say, we've made a lot of mistakes in our marriage and in parenting and in life in general. But choosing to homeschool was not one of them. It's one of the top 3 best decisions we've made as a family. Our 2 oldest children, they've been married for right around a year now. We thoroughly enjoy both our son-in-law and daughter-in-law. We're super grateful for them. They are a joy. Those 2 families have given us 2 grandbabies, a grandson and a granddaughter. They each live within just a few minutes of our house, and Paige and I sort of define winning these days by the proximity of our house to our grandkids' house. And so you can refer to us, by the way, from now on. Technically, we are now Mamie and Pappy. Vocationally, I'm not currently a pastor, but that has consumed most of my married life for around 25 years or so. And then during a portion of that, we've also owned businesses. So right now we have a couple dog boarding facilities, and we also have a unique business where we sell we partner on a small trout farming operation where we end up selling rainbow trout to high caliber chefs in Park City and Salt Lake City. But these businesses then converge to form what you might call a family enterprise, where essentially we all work together, and then generally speaking, we just have a ton of life overlap while building a family legacy for our respective households, which that's just a dream come true for Paige and I. On top of that, we all worship together in the same congregation, all with the good folks of Refuge Church in Ogden, which is about 15 to 20 minutes south of where we live. So that's obviously a tremendous blessing. This year, the fellows at New Crescendum Press asked me to write a book on the idea of the productive household. So that is actually coming hot off the press this month. I will discuss some of that material that I covered in the book in this first session of the podcast. But the book's called The Productive Household, a primer on rebuilding the family integrated economy in an age of fragmentation. If that's something that interests you, you can grab a copy at newcrescendompress.com. But the book is sort of like an overview to my children and grandchildren of why we're doing what we're doing as a household, but there is a method to our madness, that none of this was haphazard or by accident, but content-wise, I think you'll find the book is motivated by Scripture. It draws on some of the insights of our spiritual forefathers, like the Reformers and the Puritans, and I draw on those men because they were excellent practitioners of the Word. It walks through some of our family's hard-fought experiences over the years, and then it has about 5 or 6 case studies from real families that I'm close to, I know very well, who are trying to flesh out family integrated economies, build family integrated economies in northern Utah. The book's also just beautiful looking. It's a beautiful hardback book. It even has a gun dog pointing a covey of birds etched into the back, which is... it's such a nice touch. But the whole thing has this multi-generational legacy vibe. It has hand-drawn illustrations in each chapter from my 2 youngest boys. It has a foreword written by my son-in-law, a preface written by my oldest son, plenty of stories from my childhood and from our family. And so my goal was for the book to be extremely accessible to everyone. And I write on a 3rd grade reading level, which I think is helpful. And my hillbilly dialect, I think, also brings this down to earth. But I think a teenager could pick this up and be encouraged by it. I think a mom with 3 littles hanging off her legs could pick this book up and be blessed. I think an older pastor or a seasoned entrepreneur could read this as well, and it stir up their thinking. So that's my sales pitch for the book. Before I get ahead of myself, though, let me back up and share a bit more of our family story. Paige and I are originally from southern Missouri. I grew up there, married there, had our first 4 children there. I spent the first half of our married life in pastoral ministry and church planting there. We also started one business in that time frame, and then we even acted as a general contractor on a couple different houses we built early on in marriage. And then 15-ish years ago, we moved to Utah to engage in pioneer-type mission work. We did that through church planting and in a network leadership type role. And Utah, if in case you don't know, Utah is home to 4 of the top 10 least reached counties in the country, and we live in one of those counties. But one of the more interesting circumstances of our life happened just a couple years into moving to Utah. It also happens to be when we came up with the name A Lot of Family. So Paige had given birth to our 6th child, so we had 6 littles, 13 and down. A few weeks after giving birth to our 6th child, there was a unique situation that came about where we ended up adopting an 8-year-old boy. And then about 6 months after that, another unique situation came about where we ended up adopting a sibling group, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And then after that, we decided we needed to say no to unique situations. And so we were tapped out, literally. But all this is a much longer story, and maybe I'll share it one day. But the short story is we went from 5 kids, a basketball team, to 9 kids, a baseball team, in the matter of around 12 months, which honestly was a lot. So our homeschool class immediately doubled in size. So did our grocery bill. So did the messes. So did corrective discipline. A whole bunch of other things as well. The only thing that didn't double in size was our house size and our income or the seats in our vehicle. We had kids stacked up like cordwood in 2 bedrooms. We had 4 boys in 1 bedroom, four girls in another, and we had the baby in a bassinet in the master bedroom. So for a while we had to drive 2 vehicles everywhere we went, and it was interesting. Anyway, at that time, there was a walking path by our house, about a 4-mile circle around this lake, and so several evenings a week we would take a walk. So we would load up the strollers, the kids' bikes, and scooters. There was 11 of us, so everywhere we went was sort of like a small town parade. But anyway, at one point on this trail, the path went on the back side of some houses, which had a chain link fence separating the path, the walking path, from backyards. And one day, a little boy in one of those yards, he sees us coming, and he's maybe 4 or 5, and he ran up and he grabbed a hold of that fence, pressed his face up to that chain link, and he just sort of watched us like we were animals at a zoo, or maybe like the main attraction at a circus. And then all of a sudden, with bright eyes and at the top of his lungs, he just says, "Wow, that is a lot of family." And Paige and I sort of laughed and said to one another, "Buddy, you don't even know the half of it." So from that point on, we really did have a lot of family and a whole lot going on all the time. But a lot of family meant every normal task turned into events, and every meal was a full-blown party. Paige made 33 plates of food a day, which turns into 230 plates a week, close to 1,000 a month, and that's not including weekly hospitality to like our church, with church members and neighbors and so forth. And so if you happen to have maybe your wife listening, and you have a husband and 1 or 2 or 3 kids, and let's say maybe you're in a bad habit of whining and belly aching regarding your meal prep, or managing the house, or keeping up with the laundry, or your lack of sleep, you might want to avoid complaining in front of my wife. She just has zero sympathy, no tolerance for that sort of grumbling and complaining. So anyway, did I mention that we're executive club members at Costco? Kind of a sort of a funny story. Costco's this, it's where you buy large quantities of things. It's a bulk food store. But oddly enough, every time my wife checks out, each week she goes to Costco, every time she checks out, the cashier, without fail, will say, are you having a wedding reception this weekend? Or do you work at a restaurant or something? And my wife will just look at her and say, "Ma'am, no, I'm actually just trying to feed my own children. And this probably isn't enough food." So back to my point, a lot of families seem like the perfect moniker for this podcast, because that's what we intend to do. Talk about a lot of family stuff, and we will do our dead level best to make it as principled and practical and as accessible as we possibly can. We'll talk about things like large family logistics and household order and structure, child training tips and manners and chores and etiquette and homeschooling and hospitality and being in-laws and being grandparents, and how to celebrate well, and dinner tables and food, of course, family habits and traditions, lots of family business talk, and then also things like dating or courtship, anything from household leadership to housekeeping, being good church members. We'll talk about things that have served us well over the years, and then things that we wish we knew when we were 28, wish we knew 28 years ago when we were newly married. And then, of course, we have plenty of hard-learned lessons that maybe we can help you avoid or navigate. But again, my wife will be involved in some of these discussions, and sometimes my adult children. And then, Lord willing, there are plenty of folks I would hope to introduce to you that I think will be a great encouragement to your family. And then we're working on some other behind-the-scenes type stuff that we hope will be a value add to your household. Maybe recipes. My girls are just incredible in the kitchen. Maybe some decorating and design tips or celebration ideas. In a former life, my wife has a degree in interior design, and so she just has a great eye for those kinds of things. But we'll talk about business ideas maybe, and some book recommendations, maybe some how-to stuff. But we want to be a blessing to you and your endeavors. But in reality, what we really long to do is fan the flame of strong, reforming households. When we agree with Richard Baxter in this, who wrote in the 1600s, but he said, you're not likely to see any general reformation till you procure family reformation. He says some little religion there may be here and there, but while it is confined to single persons and not promoted in families, it will not prosper nor promise much future increase. And with that said, we want this podcast and any resource we can provide to be a blessing to households. And I would say we especially have a heart for families, young families in their 20s and 30s. So you'll see a lot of content directed in that direction for sure initially. But additionally, I think we'll aim for these discussions to be about 30 minutes in length, maybe something that Dad can listen to on his way home from work on a commute, or maybe something Mom can listen to when she puts the kids down for an afternoon nap. And so we want them to be digestible in that way. But all that said, thank you for taking time to listen to this introductory podcast. Again, I would encourage you to check out the book that's coming off the press this month called The Productive Household at New Crescendum Press. Let me leave you with the following words, which I will swing back around to in episodes to come. But this is from J.I. Packer's book, A Quest for Godliness, The Puritan Vision for the Christian Life. And he says this: the Puritans accounted religion an engagement of duty, that the best Christians should be the best husbands, the best wives, best children, the best magistrates, the best servants, the best subjects, that the doctrine of God might be adorned, not blasphemed. And second, that Puritan teachers, through humane family life in which Christian love and joy would find full and free expression, could not be achieved until the ordered pattern they envision, meaning the regular authority structure and daily routine, had been firmly established. Their passion to please God expressed itself in an ardor of order. Their vision of a good and godly life was of a planned, well thought out flow of activities in which all obligations were recognized and met, and time was found for everything that mattered: for personal devotion, for family worship, for household tasks, for wage-earning employment, for intimacy with spouse and children, for Sabbath rest, and whatever else one's calling or callings required. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.